Watch before delete. I was trapped in a bedroom all night with my alien roommate. Evan Hale never thought his first night on a galactic station would end with him trapped in a bedroom. The room was small, clean, and shaped like a stretched circle. The walls were a soft silver color, glowing faintly with built-in lights. There were no windows. Everything was smooth, as if the room had grown instead of being built. Evan sat on the edge of his bed, boots still on, listening to the quiet hum of the station. Across the room stood his roommate. Kethra was not human. The alien was tall and thin, with long arms that bent slightly backward at the elbows. Its skin looked like dark glass, reflecting the light in dull colors. No hair, no visible mouth. Its eyes were wide and pale, always moving, always watching. They had met only 6 hours ago. The Human Galactic Exchange Program said this living arrangement would encourage understanding. Evan wasn't sure about that yet. Kethra stood perfectly still, facing the wall. That was normal, Evan had been told. Kethra's species entered low movement states when thinking. Evan cleared his throat. "So this is it," he said. "Home." Kethra turned its head slowly. "This space meets regulation standards," it replied in a calm, flat voice. "You will adapt." Evan smiled weakly. "Yeah, humans are good at that." Before Kethra could respond, the lights flickered. Once, twice. Then a sharp metallic sound echoed through the room. Clang. The door slid shut with sudden force. Evan jumped to his feet. Oh, was that supposed to happen? The lights dimmed, turning red. A cold, emotionless voice filled the room. "Attention! Station-wide lockdown initiated. All personnel remain in assigned quarters." Evan walked to the door and waved his wrist communicator in front of the control panel. Nothing happened. "Hey," he said, tapping harder. "Open." No response. Kethra stepped closer, examining the door. "This is not scheduled," it said. "That's not comforting," Evan replied. Another message played. "System update in progress. Estimated duration unknown." Evan felt his stomach tighten. "Unknown, that's not great." Kethra tilted its head slightly. "Panic is inefficient." "Easy for you to say," Evan muttered. Minutes passed, then more. The air felt strange. Not bad, just different, thinner. Evan loosened his jacket and sat on the bed again. "So, lockdowns happen often?" "Rarely," Kethra said, "and never during human adaptation cycles." Evan laughed once, short and nervous. "Of course." Another alert appeared on the wall screen. "File detected." "That file should not exist." "Well, it does," Evan said. "Should we watch it?" Silence. Then Kethra said no. That answer made Evan more curious, not less. Before he could ask again, the room lights dimmed further. The hum of the station softened. The air changed again, slightly colder now. Evan took a deep breath and frowned. "Okay, that's definitely not normal." Kethra stepped back, its posture no longer relaxed. "The environmental system is adjusting," it said. "This room is calibrated for my species." Evan blinked. "Wait, what?" "You were scheduled to be moved to a shared human block after rest cycle," Kethra continued. "This space is temporary." Evan stood up fast. "So this room isn't designed for humans." "Correct." Evan looked around. "You think that's something you should have mentioned earlier?" "The risk was considered minimal," Kethra said. Evan laughed again, but there was no humor in it. "Yeah, well, humans don't really like minimal risk. We prefer no risk." He walked to the wall panel and tried manually adjusting the air settings. Locked. "Fantastic," Evan said. "Trapped in a room not meant for me, during a system failure, with an alien roommate who thinks panic is inefficient." Kethra watched him closely. "Your heart rate has increased. That's called being human." Another 10 minutes passed. Evan began to feel it now. The air was thinner. Breathing took more effort. Not dangerous yet, but uncomfortable. Kethra noticed Evan sitting down again, slower this time. "You are deteriorating," it said. Evan looked up sharply. "Excuse me." "Your species requires higher oxygen density," Kethra replied. "Extended exposure may result in unconsciousness." Evan swallowed. "And you're just telling me this now?" There was a 98% chance the lockdown would end quickly, Kethra said. And the other 2%, Kethra paused. That outcome is currently unfolding. Evan leaned back against the wall and closed his eyes for a moment. He focused on breathing slow, controlled, the way his father taught him during mountain hikes on Earth. You know, Evan said, humans survive in places we're not supposed to. Kethra's eyes narrowed slightly. Statistically unlikely. Statistically, Evan replied, humans shouldn't have left Earth either. The wall screen flickered again. The watch before delete file pulsed softly as if waiting. Kethra turned away from it. Evan noticed. You really don't like that file, Evan said. That file represents failure, Kethra replied. Human failure. Evan raised an eyebrow. Funny, because so far it feels like a system failure. The lights dimmed another level. Evan felt a headache forming. How long until morning cycle? He asked. 8 standard hours, Kethra said. Evan let out a slow breath. 8 hours trapped, low oxygen, no help. He smiled faintly. Well, he said, pushing himself back to his feet, guess we're gonna get to know each other. Kethra studied him carefully now, not as a roommate but as a variable. You are not afraid enough, it said. Evan looked at the sealed door, the red lights, the silent station beyond the walls. Oh, he replied quietly. I am. Then he straightened his shoulders. I just don't quit. The room hummed softly as the system continued its unknown update, and the file labeled watch before delete continued to wait. Time moved slowly inside the sealed bedroom. Evan could feel every minute passing by the way his chest rose and fell. Breathing now required effort. Not pain, just work, like climbing a hill that never ended. Kethra stood near the wall panel, its long fingers moving across invisible controls. The alien's face showed no emotion, but its movements were faster than before. This system is ignoring all priority commands, Kethra said. That is not possible. Evan sat on the floor back against the bed frame. Welcome to human life, he said between breaths. Impossible things happen all the time. Kethra looked at him. Your humor is decreasing. Yeah, Evan replied. That happens when oxygen does too. The room lights flickered again, briefly turning white before returning to red. The wall screen came alive. System status, unstable. It never left. The screen pulsed softly, almost like a heartbeat. Evan pushed himself to his feet, slowly and carefully. Standing too fast made him dizzy. He waited until the room stopped spinning, then walked toward the screen. Kethra, he said, what happens if we watch it? Kethra hesitated. That alone told Evan everything. That file was sealed by the council, Kethra said. It contains information classified as disruptive. To who? Evan asked. To galactic stability. Evan laughed quietly. That usually means someone messed up. The air grew colder. Evan hugged his arms to his chest. Look, I don't know how your people work, but where I'm from, ignoring warning messages is how people get hurt. Kethra looked at the screen again. Its reflection shimmered across its dark skin. This station was built using predictive survival models, it said. Human variables were removed after early trials. Evan frowned. Removed? Yes. Something cold settled in Evan's stomach. Removed how? Kethra did not answer immediately. The silence was heavier than the low oxygen. Finally, the alien spoke. Human participants exceeded acceptable deviation limits. Evan stared. You mean they survived things they weren't supposed to? That is one interpretation, Kethra replied. Evan took a slow breath. And this file, Kethra turned away, was created by a human engineer. That was all Evan needed to hear. Play it, he said. I cannot, Kethra replied, but you can. Evan stepped closer and placed his hand on the screen. The system hesitated. Then the file opened. The screen filled with static, then cleared. A human face appeared, older, tired, but focused. Testing, the man said. If you're seeing this, the system failed again. Evan leaned closer. My name is Daniel Moore, the man continued. Human systems engineer, exchange program. This message is for anyone locked into a non-human environment during a station update. Kethra's eyes widened. The recording continued. The station AI doesn't account for human endurance, Daniel said. It assumes failure where humans adapt. That scares the council. Evan swallowed. They'll tell you this file is dangerous, Daniel said. They'll say to delete it. Don't. The screen flickered, then showed diagrams of station rooms, oxygen levels, temperature curves, emergency overrides. If you're human, Daniel said, your body can handle more than they think, but you need to move, stay awake, control your breathing. Evan followed along, adjusting his posture, slowing his breaths. Manual systems still exist, Daniel continued. They don't expect anyone to use them. The screen showed a panel behind a wall seam. Evan looked around the room. Kethra, help me find that panel. Kethra hesitated. This action violates council protocols. Evan looked at the alien. His face was pale now, lips slightly blue. I violate expectations, Evan said. It's kind of our thing. Something changed in Kethra's posture. It nodded once. Together they searched the walls. Evan moved slower now, but he did not stop. His muscles burned, his head throbbed, but he kept going. There, Kethra said, pointing to a faint line in the wall. Evan pressed against it. The panel resisted, then shifted slightly. Got it, Evan said, breathless. He worked the panel open using his fingers, nails scraping against the metal. Behind it were old controls, physical switches, dusty and ignored. Daniel's voice continued in the background. If you're still alive, the recording said, that means you're human. Evan smiled weakly. He flipped the first switch. Nothing happened. He flipped the second. The room hummed louder. Oxygen levels rose slightly. Evan gasped as the air became easier to breathe. Kethra stepped back in shock. That system was deactivated centuries ago. Yeah, Evan said. We're good at using old things. Minutes passed. The room stabilized, but only partially. The screen flashed again. Warning, power grid failure imminent. Evan slumped against the wall. How bad is that? He asked. Kethra stared at the message. Total loss of light, temperature control, door access. Evan exhaled slowly. So the dark. Yes. Evan closed his eyes for a moment. Then he opened them and stood up again. Okay, he said. Then we prepare. Kethra looked at him. Prepare for what? For surviving, Evan replied. The lights flickered violently. The hum of the station dropped into silence. Then darkness, total and complete. The screen went black. The air grew still. Evan's breathing was loud in the quiet. Kethra's voice sounded different now. Lower, uncertain. You should be unconscious, it said. Evan swallowed and leaned against the bed. Not yet, he replied. Humans are stubborn. In the dark, the recording's final words echoed in Evan's memory. Watch before delete. Outside the room, the station drifted in silence. Inside, a human refused to fall. Darkness filled the room like water in a sinking ship. Evan could not see his own hands. The red glow, the wall screen, everything was gone. Only silence remained, broken by his breathing and the faint, distant vibration of the station. He leaned against the bed and stayed still. Moving too fast now would be a mistake. Evan, Kethra said softly. Its voice sounded different in the dark, less controlled. Your breathing pattern is unstable. That's because, Evan replied slowly, I'm doing all the work now. The air felt heavy again. Not as bad as before, but not good either. Evan focused on what Daniel's message had said. Move, stay awake, control your breathing. He bent his knees and sat on the floor, then stretched his legs out. Slow movements, no wasted energy. Kethra, he said, talk to me. About what? The alien asked. Anything, Evan replied. Silence lets the body shut down. Kethra paused. That concept is unfamiliar. Then learn it, Evan said. Humans survive by staying connected. There was a moment of hesitation. Then Kethra spoke. My species evolved in controlled environments, it said. Unpredictability causes failure. Evan smiled faintly in the dark. Yeah, we evolved in chaos. The temperature dropped another degree. Evan shivered. "How long since power loss?" he asked. 16 minutes, Kethra answered. Evan nodded slowly. "Okay, that's still manageable." "You speak as if this situation has a favorable outcome," Kethra said. Evan adjusted his position, pressing his back against the bed frame. "I don't know if it does," he replied, "but giving up guarantees it doesn't." Kethra was quiet after that. Minutes passed. Evan began to feel tired in a dangerous way, not just sleepy, heavy. His limbs wanted to stop. His eyes wanted to close. He slapped his thigh lightly. "Nope," he muttered. "Not yet." Kethra heard it. "You are inflicting pain." "Just a reminder," Evan said. "I'm still here." The alien moved closer. Evan could hear it now, the soft sound of its limbs against the floor. "You are exceeding biological limits," Kethra said. "My data predicts collapse." Evan breathed in slowly. "Your data never met my grandfather." Kethra tilted its head. "Explain." "He worked in cold places," Evan said. "No advanced tech, just his body and his will. He taught me something." "What?" Kethra asked. Evan smiled, even though no one could see it. "That limits our suggestions." The station shuddered suddenly. A low vibration rolled through the floor and walls. Kethra reacted instantly. "Structural shift detected." Evan braced himself. "Is that bad?" "Yes," Kethra said, "but also unusual." Another vibration followed. Then a faint sound, a click. Evan's head snapped up. "Did you hear that?" "Yes," Kethra replied. "Mechanical response." Evan pushed himself up, legs shaking slightly. He reached out carefully, counting steps from memory. 3 steps, 5. He reached the wall. "The manual panel," he said. "It reacted when the grid failed." "That system should be dormant," Kethra replied. Evan ran his fingers along the wall until he found the open seam. Cold metal met his skin. "Dormant doesn't mean dead," Evan said. He reached inside, feeling blindly. Wires, switches, levers. He remembered the diagram from the video. They don't expect anyone to use them. Evan's fingers closed around a lever. "Kethra," he said, "if something bad happens, step back." "You are already in danger," the alien replied. Evan pulled the lever. Nothing. He pulled another. The station groaned. Then a deep sound echoed through the room, the door. Something inside it moved. Evan's heart raced. "Yes, come on." A's breathing, normally silent, quickened. "That door has not been opened manually in over 300 cycles," it said. Evan gritted his teeth and pulled the final switch. The door unlocked with a loud metallic thunk. Evan staggered backward, gasping. Before he could celebrate, alarms exploded through the station. Red light flooded back into the room, harsh and blinding. "Security breach detected." Evan sank down against the bed, exhausted. "Yeah, figures." Kethra moved closer, studying him carefully now, not as a roommate, not as a statistic, as something else. "You should be unconscious," it said again. "Your oxygen intake, temperature exposure, and fatigue exceed survival predictions." Evan wiped sweat from his forehead. "Humans don't read predictions." The hallway outside the room filled with movement, shadows, footsteps, distant voices. Security was coming. Kethra looked from the door back to Evan. "You saved us," it said quietly. Evan shrugged weakly. "Team effort." "No," Kethra replied. "You acted when logic said you should not." Evan looked up at the alien. "Logic didn't grow up on Earth." The alarms grew louder. Kethra turned toward the wall panel and activated its personal recorder. "What are you doing?" Evan asked. "Documenting," Kethra replied. "This data cannot be lost." Evan laughed softly. "You're really serious about that file now, huh?" "Yes," Kethra said. It was labeled incorrectly. The door fully opened. Security lights flashed outside. Kethra finished the recording and saved it under a new tag. Human response. Unexpected. Evan closed his eyes for a moment, letting himself rest at last. Whatever happened next, he knew one thing. They would not forget tonight. The hallway outside the room was filled with light and sound. Security drones hovered near the ceiling, their lenses glowing blue. Alien officers in layered armor stood behind them, weapons lowered but ready. Their eyes moved from the open door to the human sitting on the floor inside. Evan Hale looked small in that moment. He was pale, tired, and shaking from exhaustion. His breathing was slow but steady. He leaned against the bed, eyes half open, refusing to fully collapse. Kethra stood beside him. When the lead officer stepped forward, Kethra raised one long arm. "Stop," it said. The officer paused. "This room is under investigation." "Yes," Kethra replied. "And this human is the reason it still exists." The officer's eyes shifted to Evan. "A human activated a restricted manual override?" the officer asked. Evan opened one eye. "Technically, several." A low murmur spread through the officers. "That should not be possible," one said. Kethra turned slowly, its voice calm but firm. "Your systems assumed humans would fail." The officers exchanged looks. "Remove the human for medical review," the lead officer ordered. 2 drones moved forward. Evan tried to stand and failed. His legs simply refused. Kethra stepped in front of him again. "No," it said. "This is not your decision," the officer replied. Kethra activated its recorder and projected a hologram into the hallway. The image showed the bedroom in darkness. Evan was visible, moving slowly, breathing carefully, guiding systems never meant to be touched. Kethra's voice played over the recording. "Human subject continues despite oxygen deficit, temperature loss, and fatigue beyond projected survival." The officers watched in silence. The recording continued. Daniel Moore's warning played. "Watch before delete." The hologram ended. "This file was marked for deletion," the officer said. "Yes," Kethra replied. "So was the truth." The hallway was quiet now. Finally, the lead officer spoke. "Escort the human to medical care." This time, no one argued. Evan was lifted gently onto a floating stretcher. As he was carried away, he looked back at Kethra. "Hey," he said weakly, "guess we survived the night." Kethra nodded once. "Against all predictions." Evan woke up in a bright room. The ceiling was high and white. The air felt rich and clean. He took a deep breath and smiled slightly. "Still breathing," he muttered. A soft voice spoke beside him. "You are awake sooner than expected." Kethra stood near the wall. Evan blinked. "You stayed?" "Yes," Kethra said. "I was instructed to answer questions." Evan laughed quietly. "Let me guess, a lot of them." Kethra inclined its head. "Your survival has caused discussion." Evan sat up slowly. His body ached, but it felt like a familiar pain. When he understood, "What happens now?" he asked. "The Council is reviewing all human adaptation data," Kethra replied, "including files previously erased." Evan frowned. "Erased?" "Yes," Kethra said. "Humans survive too often. It disrupted prediction models." Evan shook his head. "So instead of updating the model, they deleted the evidence." "Correct." Evan leaned back. "Figures." A screen on the wall activated. The title appeared in bold text. "Watch before delete." Then, slowly, the words changed. "Watch, never delete." Evan smiled. Kethra watched him carefully. "You are not angry." "I am," Evan said. "But I'm also human. We don't just get mad, we change things." Days later, the footage spread. Not through entertainment channels. Through training halls, council chambers, and research centers. Aliens watched a human push past limits their science said were impossible. They watched him stay awake in the dark. They watched him breathe thin air and keep moving. The word began to spread. Humans endure. Exchange protocols were rewritten. Stations were upgraded. Manual systems were restored, not because they were efficient, but because humans could use them. Evan returned to the same bedroom 1 week later. It looked different now. The air was perfect, the lighting adjustable, the walls reinforced. Kethra stood near the window. Yes, there was a window now. "This room meets human standards," it said. Evan smiled. "Guess complaining works." "This was not a complaint," Kethra replied. "It was proof." Evan set his bag down and looked around. "So," he said, "still roommates." Kethra turned to face him. "If you agree." Evan laughed. "Yeah, I think I do." Kethra paused, then spoke again. I have reclassified humans, it said. Evan raised an eyebrow. Oh yeah. Yes, Kethra replied. You are not fragile. Evan crossed his arms. Never were. You are adaptable, Kethra continued. Unpredictable, persistent. Evan nodded. Sounds about right. Kethra added, and necessary. That made Evan stop. Necessary? He asked. Kethra looked at the stars beyond the window. When systems fail, it said, someone must keep going. Evan followed its gaze. Out there, beyond the station, space stretched endless and dark. Good thing you invited humans, Evan said. Kethra nodded. On the station network, one final message was archived, not hidden, not erased, pinned permanently. Watch, never delete, because some things were not warnings, they were lessons, and humanity had taught one that night.